with the work that you're doing and, the information you're helping people with, would you say it's a Commonwealth kind of thing? So, for example, it would be similar in England, it would be similar work in the States and Canada and New Zealand. Would you say it would generally be similar in each of these countries? So, for example, I could say to my mum, "Oh, mum, look, I watched this video and you want to learn about common law and what to say to the police and things." Would you say generally, if someone's from the States and they're watching this, would it be the same sort of thing to an extent?
I believe it is. To the best of my knowledge, I mean, I'm not an expert on all of this across different countries, but really most of it, when it comes down to it, is just common sense. It's common sense. I haven't committed a crime. There is no victim. I haven't done anything wrong. If you're trying to make me believe I've done something wrong, you are the one committing the crime now. And that holds true everywhere in the world, really. It's just common sense.
All right, I think we're recording. Hey, everybody, welcome to another show. I am back again with my friend Kayleigh, and we have another guest with us today. But first, I'm going to say a big thank you to Kayleigh. She made a shout out to Mark Passio, and a bunch of people saw us, and we got some hits, and we're getting some help, so that's great. Thank you, Kayleigh, for doing the great work. You're doing a lot of hard work, and I really appreciate it, and I just wanted everyone to know that. So, yeah. So how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. Well, as can be with what's going on in Melbourne, I guess. It's a bit stressful at the moment for us Melbournians.
Yeah.
Not that I'm a true Melbournian, but you know what I mean. I am here, so.
It's all fun and games. All fun and games.
So, yeah, we'd just like to introduce James also. James lives in Melbourne. And so he's been doing a little bit of work online. I managed to connect with James. So would you like to just have a brief explanation of what you've been doing, James? What kind of things you've been doing?
Yeah, cool. So my name's James Bartolo, for anyone new watching this, and I've started a channel called the Conscious Truth Network. And on that channel, it's dedicated to exposing the evil and corruption that is the network, the controlling hand, the master puppet hand behind all these schemes that are happening across the world that's being orchestrated together. So in my country, Australia, and across the world. So it's dedicated to exposing that and then teaching people about their rights, teaching them about how the human body actually gets sick and the nature of a virus, and helping these people who are conscious to form a following, and then the people who are in the middle to choose the right side to stand on. And it's all a part of elevating people's levels of consciousness, because I believe intelligence is very different to consciousness. You can have some bloody smart people who are absolutely unconscious and they have no clue whatsoever what is happening in the real world. So that's what I'm not talking about intelligence, I'm talking about consciousness. And the way I define consciousness is having the curiosity to have a greater understanding about yourself and the reality that you live in. And so that's my goal, to help people see the truth of what's going on, elevate their level of consciousness, because I know when people do that, then it's game over for this disgusting network of filth that is currently pulling the strings of governments all across the world and creating a total oppressive dictatorship. So raising people's level of consciousness and then doing the right thing. So that's what my channel is about.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. I'd also like to add in, when you say about the higher level consciousness, I really agree, because it's not, it's like there's awareness, and then you've got your spiritual higher self-awareness. And when we say spiritual awareness, we don't mean, the little ghost that's floating around inside your body. We're just talking, activation of the pineal gland, connecting with something higher than your body and your own thoughts every single day. You're connecting with your intuition, your feelings. What are they telling you? Because not many people do think about their intuition. It's always, what do I think? No, you should be saying, what do I feel? How do I feel about this? How does this situation feel most of the time, in my opinion? Obviously, I have a balance, but we need to connect to our emotions as well. And if something's saying, well, that's not right or whatever. we need to listen to that. But I have actually gained a lot of knowledge from James, because I wasn't aware of the differences between the common law and the law that we're being told is the narrative at the moment. Also, James is organised to do weekly meetings for people who are connected to the higher awareness, the higher consciousness, and we've all been going through our thoughts and feelings for what's going on in Melbourne, and that's been really helpful for everyone's mental health, I feel, because we're in the minority, wouldn't you say, James, at the moment in Melbourne?
In a way, but I honestly believe that not really. I do believe we are the majority. Just most people are too scared to say anything. That's all. They just need to be inspired with courage. And they need to see what we're doing and then take a stand against that. And I think most people know this is a fucking hoax, but they're just too scared to do anything because they don't believe in themselves. They don't think they are powerful enough to do anything. So they just acquiesce and say, oh, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to get in trouble. But for people like us who really know what's going on, there's no fear in standing up and speaking your truth. The only fear is doing nothing because we know what's going to come. So I believe majority of people, eventually they will come across to the right side. And I really don't think it's that many people who are sheep. I think, because I get a lot of hate and trolls, I think majority of them are just government bots, because just normal people can't be that silly to completely ignore everything we're saying. I think the majority of people, say I've had one video, it got 600,000 views, 10,000 comments. That's a small percentage of people actually chipping in to have their voice heard. Majority of people are still silent. They're watching, they're viewing, they're waiting, and they're slowly coming along. Obviously, we wish it was faster, but what can we?
Well, that's the thing. At least, though, you're trying really hard. You're being really successful, I would say. And that's the main thing, to be honest, because Melbourne is Victoria is actually the strictest state at the moment, isn't it, regarding masks and fines and things. So I think we've got our work cut out more than anywhere else.
I think it's one of the most restricted places in the world at the moment. Yeah, with mandatory masks. Brandon, does America anywhere have mandatory masks?
Well, the way that it works here, there's a lot of places that are claiming to have mandatory masks, but technically the way it works, I had it explained to me, is a governor could make a law, or he could pass an act, and then the health department has to make regulations based on that or make guidelines based on that, and then people have to adhere to that if they want to keep their business open. So technically, people aren't supposed to be able to get a fine, but I've heard of it happening. I don't know anybody though, and I haven't saw anybody directly that's talked about it on a podcast that it's happened to. So I don't know if these stories I'm seeing in the news, because I do see some where there's fines for $1,000 or whatever. I don't know if it's just scare tactics, fear, trying to get people to fall in line because they don't want to get a fine. But where I am, I haven't had any issues with it. I've had friends. I'm trying to think. I have a friend that lives in LA, and she mostly wears a mask, but not all the time. She's not totally. She's somebody that, I actually do my tarot podcast with her, and she's coming awake to a lot of new truth, like a lot of people are right now, because it's so over the top and ridiculous. So she doesn't wear it everywhere, but, and she said in LA, they're not really crazy about it. So I don't see them cracking down, just more in the news and more, stores mandating and stuff. And again, if you want to walk in the store, as long as you have a medical condition, they're usually letting people in. A couple places, I've seen people stop, but recently they've just been letting people in and not even saying anything. I think people are pushing back too much around here.
Beautiful to hear. Yeah, there's quite a few big stores over here. I think Aldi and some of the supermarkets have, publicly posted that they're not going to be enforcing mask wearing. That's the job of the police, not their store workers. And if you want to come in, you don't have to wear a mask. And the crazy thing is, no one in Australia and Victoria needs to wear a mask. it's not a law. The government isn't even telling everyone to wear a mask. They're tricking people, saying, "Oh, you all have to wear a mask," but you don't have to if you have a lawful excuse and a medical exemption, and we won't ask you for proof of that. Like, it's literally listed on their government website. Have you seen that, Kay?
Yeah, definitely. And people have been panicking, calling up the doctor, trying to get these medical exemption forms when you actually don't even need that. All you have to say is your word. I mean, I've used it a few times. I've actually pre-called up a few of the shops, right, and said, I've got a medical exemption. I'm not going to be wearing a mask. Are you all right if I still come in? And they've even said, yeah. When I've got in the shop, they've taken their own mask off, and they've just, as if like, oh, freaking hell, like, someone else who doesn't care, you know what I mean? Like, because I was the only one in the shop at that point. And so the same's also happened. I've been getting in taxis, right? And I've told the taxi drivers I'm not going to be wearing a mask, but because I've got a medical exemption. And there's a couple of them who've taken their mask off and said, I actually made a video, I posted it, I think it was onto your page, James, about the taxi driver said the mask makes his glasses steam up when he's driving, he feels like he can't breathe, it's very uncomfortable for him. To me, that's quite dangerous, really, but it's not his fault, he doesn't understand, he doesn't really know. And I said, look, it's fine, mate. I said, just don't have to wear it with me. I said, I don't care. And a couple of taxi drivers have been, so like you said, James, a lot of people are too scared, even if they're not consciously aware of something, they're actually just scared to even not wear a mask or scared of the fine. But as we've been discovering, you don't even need to be scared of the fine, even if you don't have a medical exemption.
Yeah. One thing I want to add real quick about here in the States is I think, or at least in Connecticut, the way they did is they locked everything down and then they made it conditional to open up in different stages, but every stage was like, you have to wear a mask. So people that are in restaurants now, they're like, well, you have to wear a mask or we're going to get shut down. And, I keep trying to I would tell them, listen, this is the law. In some places, they didn't care. They were like really super crazy about it. I was kind of refused service at this one burrito place. They called their district manager and then they called their district manager a Nazi very politely. But I wasn't being, too rude, but I had to let her know, I had to let it be known. And I did it where I was outside on the phone in the parking lot. There's people that heard me and I was like very calmly explaining to her. And she's like, I'm just doing my job. And I'm like, yes, that I understand, but that's exactly what the Nazis said. So I don't like that excuse, but that's kind of how it's different because even with you guys, you need the medical, you have the medical exemption, you have that angle. It's just like people are given a choice. And this is kind of how I see it. And a lot of people are seeing it too. It's a test, really. And I believe that the people, there's people that are paying attention to this test. And, like everyone's like they or who are they and all this stuff. And it's not only the people that are like in government in charge, but there's also crooks and criminals that are paying attention that maybe these people who are they in control don't even realize, but there's other people that are paying attention to this. And I feel that it's not a good look to be running around with a mask because you're just making yourself a victim. And that's, part of this, but it is really the choice. That's what I kind of wanted to talk, to ask you about, James. Is that what you're seeing, and what you're doing with your work in the law and like in common law and stuff? You seeing how there's like, it's set up for the person if they just look into it, kind of. For the individual, I mean.
Yeah, well, they always leave these loopholes open because I think they have to. They have to for, reasons beyond my understanding. But I think one of those are, that they can't be seen to go in direct opposition to the actual law because like when it goes to court for certain things, then they'll get totally exposed and the fraud will be exposed. So they always leave these loopholes open for people who are, dedicated and smart enough to search for them and to find them. And a lot of the time, they're really not that hard. Like even with fines and all that, you just got to ask, where's the jurisdiction coming from? How do you have the authority to do this? And when you understand what they are and who they are, then it's rather easy at that point, really,
So could you just explain, so I'm still new to this. Is it the straw man theory or is it, so you said you've got common law and then you've got something else. I've forgotten what that is. There's a difference, isn't it? There's the old one, and then there's a new government one which they've made up and said we've got to follow those rules. Would you be able to just explain a bit more about that?
Yeah, so you've got actual law, like common law, in the background there. But then you've got all these other rules, I guess you'd call them, legislation, statutes, acts, directives, rules, all these that you don't have to follow them. They were initially introduced as guidelines and policies and restrictions for the government themselves on how much they could control the population. It was a strategy to prevent tyranny from the government, but tyranny still seeped its way in, infiltrators, and they've tricked the people into thinking that they need to obey this statutory legislation, but it doesn't concern them. There's really only common law, and I'm sure everyone can agree with common law. It's to summarize, it's basically don't do things to other people that you don't want done to yourself. So don't murder, rape, torture, steal, break things, blah, blah, blah. They're very, very simple things, because when you think outside of actual law, everything's just revenue raising. Everything else is just there to design to control your life and further enslave you into the matrix, into the system. And that's not right. It doesn't even matter if it was actual law. So what? It's unethical, it's unmoral, it's not right. We don't agree to it, we don't consent. That's raping our freedom. No, we're not having that. No, we'll do the right thing, and anyone else who tries to not do the right thing, who tries to do the wrong thing, even with it being within legal boundaries, you're going to pay. You're going to cop it. No one's going to get out of this safe. If you're doing the wrong thing, we'll come for all of you, every single one, and we'll make sure justice is served, because Conscious Truth Network and the good people of Australia as a whole won't take it.
That's a great explanation, because like I said, I'm still pretty new to this myself, so I'm still on this journey of discovery with this kind of thing. I don't even know the correct terminology for it. But yeah, I mean, it's something that you wouldn't even think about. We just assume that the law is the law, and there's no difference between that or a rule. Yeah.
Rules, yeah. Well, that's why, like, whenever you get a speeding fine or a parking ticket, they don't quote a law you've broken on the infringement notice. It's always a rule, because they're road rules. They're rules. They're meant to be guidelines to help make driving on the road better. They're not a law. It's not a law, because the law only comes in when there's a victim and when there's a crime, and you can only have a crime committed if there's a victim. If you've been driving along without a seatbelt, well, you haven't hurt anyone. You haven't done anything wrong. It's absolutely ridiculous that anyone would even think about trying to take your money and take away your ability to drive or travel on the road because you didn't wear a seatbelt, because you drove 10, 20 Ks over the speed limit and didn't cause any harm. Like, I've only been learning about this stuff for the past, probably since end of last year. So I'm very new to all this as well, but I've been speaking to people who are very intelligent and very experienced with this topic. And I've been reading people's books and studying people's stuff, and they know a lot more than I do. And, it is a very deep and complex thing, because they have had to go to extraordinary lengths to fool, hoodwink, manipulate, trick, and deceive everyone into thinking we have to follow their unjust and unlawful legislation. So it's a huge one to unravel, but it is an interesting topic to talk about.
Well, it's worked. I mean, it's certainly even hoodwinked even me, to be honest, and that's not easy to do with authority. I've been like that since school, but I actually ordered a book from Know Your Rights, that info. Yeah. I ordered this one, yeah, because I got a red light fine and I still haven't paid it. I mean, I think that was about half a year ago, and I've been sat waiting on it because I've been thinking, I know it's not right and I don't want to pay it, but I'm still, I don't know, like, what I can do about it. So I ordered that book, and it's got the templates in, so hopefully, but that's only about speeding fines. That's only just like one section of all of this stuff that I want to learn about. So,
No, that book Aussie Speeding Fines ebook is a great book because that teaches you how to deal with basically any type of fine. It'll teach you how to deal with parking fines, the non-mask $200 fine, social distancing, any type of fines, because it basically just teaches you to ask for their jurisdiction, ask for their authority, make sure that even within their legislation, it's all been enacted correctly according to due process. And then there's thousands of different ways you can absolutely rip them apart. You destroy them, absolutely destroy them. They've got no leg to stand on. All they can use is intimidation. That's all they do, threats and intimidation. Yeah.
Well, that's what happened in your video. Sorry, Brandon, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's funny that you said hoodwinked a few minutes ago, because I was listening to this podcast and I'm looking at something similar what you're talking about, but it was dealing with Canada, and they were talking about how Canada, it's the same kind of thing. You have to, if you just get them to prove their jurisdiction, and they can't. And it's different there because I guess the way that they enacted some of these laws, they actually do like a wink and a nod instead of like signing. So it was like always a wink and a nod, and it was the ceremony. So they thought it was royal, but apparently there's really no royal backing because it was all dissolved in like the late 1800s. So from what I've heard, I think it's similar in Australia. Is that true? Is that they really have no jurisdiction, no claim?
Oh, absolutely. The government is literally a fake. Like we don't actually have a real government at the moment. It's a fake, fictitious corporation posing as our government. It's pretend. We literally don't have an actual government. And an easy way to find that is when you look at the Commonwealth of Australia's Constitution Act, 1900, and then you go through and you'll see on the website, the top left corner says Australian government. And whenever you get a letter from the Australian government, that's what it says, Australian government. But there's no mention of the Australian government in our highest law of the land, the Constitution. It is mentioned as, or referred to as, the government of the Commonwealth of Australia, not the Australian government. So what's happened here? There's either been a name change that no one has been made aware of or voted on, or we have an imposter. We have an intruder, like an infiltrating imposter. And that's exactly what's going on. Yeah.
And I think that's something that if you look at history close enough, if you look at the real history, like Cecil Rhodes and all these guys and Milner and all these guys, that's something that I think they planned on doing it, because it happened here in the United States also. If you look at when the Federal Reserve was enacted in like 1913, and then World War I happened, I think a lot of consolidation of power happens, and this is the history that we don't exactly learn about, but that's probably, it was a hoodwink, and it happened in all of these Western former territories of the Crown. I think is, even the United States you can count as one of them, even though we ostensibly fought for our freedom in 1776. It seems like we're just part of the empire now, but yeah, that's a major thing. Because are you familiar with mercantile law also?
No, I haven't heard of that.
No, we haven't.
Oh, is that like merchant law or something?
Yeah, it has to do with basically when you get, it's the same thing you were talking about with you ask them to prove their jurisdiction or their, that they have power and they can't do it. Well, here in the United States, because it's the same thing, we're just like a Western-based country, it has this, the mercantile law is like the backbone of all the law of when it used to be merchants everywhere in ships, because they had to get things done that day. So basically what happens is if somebody sends you a letter, you just said, like, if they say to you, you need to wear a mask, you could just say, okay, I'll wear a mask if you could prove to me beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's beneficial for my health, and you have to prove 100%. If you can't prove it, then you owe me $100,000. And if they don't respond to that, it's a no. And then if they try to, they're legally on the hook for this money because all these companies and governments and businesses have liability, and they have all these liability insurance backers. And then these liability insurance companies basically just have to pay you. So when you bring it to the court, the judge is no longer he's like not a decider of anything. He's just like a bureaucrat at that point. He's just like signing off on it. If you have everything right, you're just working the system against them. So this is stuff I'm looking into too, but it's very similar because it all has to do with proving that they have the power. If they can't prove it, there's nothing they can really do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I think you mentioned something similar to that before, James, if I remember, but not to that exact thing. You what was it, a fee schedule when you carry around a list of, if you engage with me any further, then you're contracting to my contract, sorry, and then you owe me $100,000 per hour or minute or something like that. I think it's similar to that, right?
Yeah, so I learned that off Alex, a guy I've been speaking to, and that's for unlawful detention when speaking to the police if they're unlawfully detaining you, for unlawful arrest, kidnap, assault, robbery, all that kind of stuff. Then, if they want to continue engaging with you after you've, explained yourself, then you can hand them a schedule of fees and say, okay, this unlawful detention is going to start at $10,000 for this engagement. The time is 11:35 a.m. Every minute you hold me up against my will, you're unlawfully detaining me, is going to be $100 per minute. So off you go. You're on my clock here. You will be charged.
Yeah, I like that. And I think the same systems are in place with the courts there where they have to accept that and they have to accept that ruling. There's this guy, Cal Washington. I'm pretty sure I heard this other guy talking about him on a podcast, but I've heard him on a podcast and someone else talking about him. But I guess he's gotten police officers fired and even judges fired because if the judge doesn't do what they're supposed to, they go against a code of conduct that that these insurance companies are held them liable. So they have to pay out and they have to fire these guys and stuff. So it's like you're kind of like a little Jedi. It's not like a power where you could just walk in and flash it around. But if somebody comes after you, it's like, listen, leave me alone or I will come after you. It's a good way for the little guy, the individual, to go after these corporations, these leviathans of government and big business.
And with experience with things like that, would you say, James, that because you've had more experience with it and you've been hearing other people's more than I have, would you say that even the police are kind of not as educated in it even? Would you say even they're a bit like, what? Sorry, what did you just say? Like, would you agree with that? Or would you say they're a bit like, all right, you get it, I'm going to back off kind of thing?
Well, they only know what they've been trained to do and what information they've had filled into their heads. So I think most of them are pretty clueless to the actual difference between legislation and law. But once you start speaking to them in a way that sounds like you know what you're talking about, like with that checkpoint, went from wanting to smash my window, threatening me, to physical assault and to drag me out of my car, to steal my car and impound it. I just, spoke to them with respect and knew the right things to say. And then they had no other choice but to let me go. And that's the power of words and keeping you calm and you're cool, because, that they might not fully understand what's going on, because if they did, they wouldn't be a cop anymore. They wouldn't be at the checkpoint if they actually knew what they were doing and what was going on. But they're not totally stupid either. They're still, hopefully not, living and breathing men and women in the force. And so when you start speaking to them a way that if you do break my car when I have not committed a crime, you will be causing malicious damage to my personal property. You will be kidnapping me. That will be armed kidnap because you have a weapon strapped to your hip. That will be armed assault. And I'm not going to go after the Victoria Police Corporation. I probably will as well, but I'll go after you personally because you are acting outside of the law as a private individual right now. And I will prosecute you to the full power of the law. And there are plenty of court case precedents which have proven that people like you who think you're a hero wearing that uniform with a weapon and acting against the law outside of it like a hero, you're going to lose. So don't even try. Yeah.
So is that video still available on YouTube? Because that's where I first watched it. Actually, this is quite strange. So I met Brandon in a chat room for a show that we watch called whatonearthishappening.com. I might have sent you the link, but anyway, you should watch it. He's amazing. And somebody in that chat room lives in Melbourne, and they sent me a link to your YouTube video of you going through that checkpoint. And he was like, "Oh, you should watch this." And I was like, "This is brilliant." I was like, "Who is this guy?" So that's what first led me on the path to, like, you know, discovering Conscious Truth Network and the common law and things like that. But would you just like to explain what was the checkpoint you were going through? Like, because in Melbourne, it's because certain sections of the city have been blocked off from the country, and, you know, we've got Melbourne Metro and, you know, things like that.
Yeah, so I was going down the Calder Freeway, just going more regional. Was catching up with a friend. We're, you know, going in the woods to have some fun, and yeah, just along the freeway. I was planning on taking the exit before it to go around it, but missed the exit. But, you know, that doesn't matter. And then, yeah, went through that checkpoint. That's where that was. That's what it was. Yeah, it wasn't like a border checkpoint between states or anything like that. No.
Well, there was a guy recently. I don't know if you heard about him. I met him at one of the protests. He's been arrested now for trying to cross. Well, he actually succeeded in getting from Melbourne to Canberra. I don't know if you heard about him. He's in a mental detention centre at the moment.
Yeah, I heard a little bit about that. I don't know what's going on with that. Yeah, I don't know.
He just he claimed he was a sovereign being free man of the land, and he successfully crossed from Melbourne to Canberra, which is actually heavily used even with military at the moment, I've heard. Is that correct?
Is it what, sorry?
I think they've got the military patrolling those borders. That's what I've heard. Yeah, so he successfully did it, but he got caught. I don't know how he got caught, but now they've put him in a mental health, I don't know what you call it now. They're saying that he needs help, and they're heavily medicating him, and he's managing to write posts about it on Facebook and things using somebody else's phone. It's terrible. But he's gonna get I don't know what's going to happen to him. I think that they're going to give him a criminal record for it or something, but it's a bit more strict in that respect in compared to what you were doing, and to actually crossing the border. It's a bit like more extreme, isn't it, with the border crossing thing? If me and you decided, oh, let's just drive to Adelaide, it's a bit more heavily policed that way, isn't it?
I'm not too sure, because it all comes down to how you do it. Like, how you actually speak to the police and what your knowledge is, you know, because even if I had all the knowledge but I was a complete fucking dickhead, you know, that probably wouldn't have got very far, you know. So it's the way you speak to them, it's what you know as well. I don't know, I started watching another video of a truck driver who went through a border, and then a cop pulled him over, but it was a long video, so I only watched a little bit of that. I don't know what the outcome was, but I think that the big thing, it all comes down to the way you speak to them. The way you speak to them. That's a big point. And I haven't watched much of, I think that was Simeon Caesar or Caesar or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. All I know is I saw some posts before that, and I don't know, I wasn't really in agreement with what he was doing or trying to plan to do. I think he wanted to, like, storm Canberra and start trying to arrest people, and it's like, you need proper coordination and organization for that. It sounds a little bit daft if you ask me, but I don't know the full story, so I can't really comment on it. Yeah. Yeah,
no, I met him at you know, when they locked down the Flemington. Sorry, Brandon. You know, just put your hand up if you want to speak. I'm joking.
No, it just popped for some reason. It can't. I think because there's noise behind me. Someone's being loud outside, so it like popped on me, and I was like on the screen, like, hi. So no, you go ahead. You're good.
All right. I was just going to say. So I think his name's Simeon, and I met him at the Flemington when they locked down those whole apartments here, the Flemington ones. I think that's worldwide news at the moment. And I met him there. He was very angry about what was going on. He was even, you know, calling the police out, telling them that they're going against what the WHO's recently been saying about a virus, and he was going crazy at them. I think he's very angry about what's going on. So I think he just had enough. He's fed up, and he's just done that. But like I said, it's about how you go about it. But speaking of protests, actually, James, I watched another YouTube video of yourself, and you were at the Parliament House protests in Melbourne. I didn't see you, but I was there as well with my son. What happened? Because James, you got arrested there, didn't you? Brandon, James was somebody else who got arrested at that protest. You know, when they took the kid off the father.
Oh,
we filmed
okay.
it.
Actually, I think I saw that video, because if there is video that exists of it, because I thought you looked familiar, maybe that's what it is.
Probably
What
is,
happened
yeah.
with that? Yeah.
Oh, so what happened with that? Yeah, it was at the protest, and oh man, like that really changed my opinion of those police officers who did that then, because it was honestly fucking disgusting. They were just running up behind people, grabbing them. Like, one guy had his head cut open, he was bleeding everywhere. He was literally just standing there watching the crowd come up behind him, grab him, forcefully take him away. Another guy was speaking on a megaphone, Thanos, and they've come up behind him, grabbed him and taken him away. A man with his two young kids who were like, under 2 years old or something, in a pram, was on the other side of the street, not even a part of the protest. And these mongrels have gone up, fucking thrown him on the ground, taken his kids away from him, and forcefully, like chucked handcuffs on him and removed him. And then me as well, I was walking away. I was actually walking away from it because we were going, but I was interviewing a guy as we were walking down the street, and I'm talking to a cop as well. And then boom, they jump on me and arrest me. And yeah, those police officers should be seriously ashamed. Like, they need to have some hard looks at themselves in the mirror, because if that was someone I knew, I would be absolutely disgusted in that kind of behavior. Absolutely no excuse for that. Terrible, and they've got a lot of work to do if they ever want to be looked by the public again in a positive light, because absolutely tremendously disgusting acts. Terrible.
It was bad, yeah. They even actually, at one point, they all stood shoulder by shoulder. Did you see them getting ready? And everyone was a bit like, oh, fucking hell, we're getting ready to do something. We just don't know what it is. And then they formed like an arrow shape. Did you see that? And bulldozed into the crowd and picked someone out, one of the speakers, I think. And it was like, all right, where's the social distancing then? And where's your masks?
Yeah.
Like, what happened to you after that arrest? Sorry, what did they just put you in the van and then let you go, or?
Yeah, pretty much. I just kept on saying to them, I'm like, this is a false arrest. You're going to get sued. You've got to let me go. And then they put me in the van. And then a better copper was talking to me. And he's like, yeah, look, mate, sorry, I didn't do the arrest. There was that guy. Just give me some name and details, and then you can go. And I was like, all right, cool, whatever. I'll comply with that. Here's name details. Boom, took off the handcuffs. All right, see you later. That was it. And I was like, okay. What was the actual point of that? Like, but still, regardless, if me and a couple mates went walking down the street and started grabbing people, handcuffing them, and chucking them into my van, would that be okay? Hell no. That's absolute madness. And these people, to think that they have the power to do that, have got a serious screw loose in their head, Shocking.
Yeah, for sure. I saw a lot of that, and I came to the conclusion that it looked like part of it was like a media stunt. It was, obviously a display of power, but the media was right there. They were talking with the police afterwards. It's kind of like they wanted to show people, this is what happens to you if you don't listen to us. You're going to get thrown on the ground. And they picked that kid, like that guy who said with his kids. They picked people that I think they picked troublemakers, and then just random people that would make it look more fearful. And that's part of the psychology. And I like how you said about the way you talk to police, because I feel that's really important too, because if you sound like you know what you're talking about and you're making coherent sense, and you start to implicate them and tell them, listen, you're going to be responsible, I'm just letting you know, and it's making sense, they're going to start to think twice. And when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter in that moment who's right. It just matters who yields. And if you're giving them the out by not being a jerk to them, if you're just being respectful, starting off that way, I mean, obviously, it escalates.
Yeah.
And you know this, I'm sure, but obviously for the people listening, but it's going to go a long way. I think every time I've ever had a run-in with the police where they let me go or whatever, it's just because I was respectful as long as they were cool with me. And I just was like, I just play the game, and I'm not saying you should always do that, but if you think you can get out of it, and then no, if they come to you and they want to search your stuff and they have questions and all stuff, yes, then you start to put your foot down. But I think putting your foot down right away and like just jumping on the grenade before they even toss it is a mistake. Obviously, I'm not talking about the situation with the protest. That's gross. But, in a situation where you might get pulled over or something, use your discretion. I think that is half of the battle, really, because you never know who you're going to get. And if you can make sense to them, they'll probably let you go and just get easier prey.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. They're going, this one's fighting too much. Oh, I'll go get someone easier,
100%, you proved that in the video as well. I mean, Brandon, I don't know if you watched that particular video. Did I show you that with the checkpoint with James?
No, I don't think I did. I'm going to have to check it out right away, though, after this.
Well, because James kept us cool, I think it went really well, like you were saying, it's about your attitude, because there's one moment in the video when the policeman is getting ready with something to break in the window of James' car. Like, he's literally about to bash his window in, because James was, kept us cool, and he was a bit like, yeah, that's, I can't remember what you said. You said, I'll sue you for breaking and entering or something like that. And then, but he was really calm about it. So then the police officer just kind of pretended like he wasn't going to do anything. And then he was like.
So was this when you got pulled over during the whole lockdown situation?
Going through that checkpoint. That was
going through the checkpoint. Okay, all right. And what, you just didn't want to comply? You can give us a quick story about that. I'm sure people that are listening can go watch it, but if you just want to give us like a quick breakdown of what happened.
Yeah, so I was just driving through the checkpoint, and they've scanned my number plates, and my car's come up unregistered. My license has come up suspended. And so I've gone through there, and they've stopped me, and they're like, oh, your car's unregistered. And I'm saying, okay, well, who's it registered to? And they tell me who it's registered to. And I'm like, well, what do you mean my car's unregistered? You've just told me it's in your system. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Just kept going on about that. And the thing was, it had been paid as well, but you shouldn't need to pay for your registration. That's ridiculous. And my license, I hadn't gone to court to have my license, even though having a license is, that's another topic. But I've got a license at the moment. I didn't go to court to have that removed or suspended. Where's the due process? Vic Roads, the corporation that issues registration and licenses, Vic Roads in Victoria, the state I live in, they're just a corporation. What are they doing? Like impersonating the judiciary system, impersonating a judge or a magistrate. They don't have the power to suspend licenses. That's skipping due process. That's personating a Commonwealth official. That's some big trouble there for what they're doing. And so I was explaining that to the police, and then they kept going, pull over, blah, blah, blah. Where are you going? Because that's the point of the checkpoint. They want to know where you're going, what you're doing, and if it's for a valid reason. So I just said, I don't know you, mate, to the police officer. I just met you. Why would I tell you where I'm going and what I'm doing? That's none of your bloody business. I'm free to do what I want. I'm not hurting anyone. You're the person who's trying to hurt people now. You're the one who should be getting into trouble. Yeah, so just, had a chat to them for about 20 minutes. And, yeah, they let me go. Well, I had no other choice. Mm-hmm.
Well, I like that. Yeah. It's a good story. Another thing I heard is that you could ask the officer to identify themselves. And if they refuse to, then it's a federal crime, because technically they're impersonating an officer at that point because they're not identifying themselves. So there's all little tips and tricks and things you can say to them when they don't want to play along.
Yeah. Ideally, you want to get their identification in writing, as soon as possible to the beginning of the conversation. Yes. That's important. What other questions we got? What else are we going to go over?
So, all right, I have a question. So, with the work that you're doing and, the information you're helping people with, would you say it's a Commonwealth kind of thing? So, for example, it would be similar in England, it would be similar work in the States and Canada and New Zealand. Would you say it would generally be similar in each of these countries? So, for example, I could say to my mum, "Oh, mum, look, I watched this video, and you want to learn about common law and what to say to the police and things." Would you say generally, if someone's from the States and they're watching this, would it be the same sort of thing to an extent?
I believe it is. To the best of my knowledge, I mean, I'm not an expert on all of this across different countries, but really most of it, when it comes down to it, is just common sense. It's common sense. I haven't committed a crime. There is no victim. I haven't done anything wrong. If you're trying to make me believe I've done something wrong, you are the one committing the crime now. And that holds true everywhere in the world, really. It's just common sense. But the thing is, they've brainwashed all of us, each and every single one of us, so much that we don't even get it, that it's common sense. We think it's all this complicated law stuff, but it's just all grammar, deception, and trickery. Like, when you break it down, it really isn't, a lot of it isn't that complicated. It's just, I haven't done anything wrong. You're the one trying to claim I've done something wrong. Prove it. Oh, we can't prove it. Yeah, you're acting unlawfully now. Like, go away. I'm going to travel on. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I mean,
it's
that's
interesting.
what
I noticed you changed that word because that's something that I'm thinking about when you're saying driving and traveling. There's a difference, isn't there? And
I know. It's a little bit annoying because we've grown up using the word drive and it comes so naturally to us. But, when speaking to the police, say travel. Yeah.
And that's new. That's new for me. I don't know if, Brandon, if you've heard about the language. I know you know about green language, Brandon, but do you know about the language that the police and the courts use on people, and we just kind of have a hard time distinguishing between certain words?
Yeah, this has a lot to do with the mercantile thing. And I've seen a few videos. There's people in the States where they say that they're just a sovereign citizen of, I believe it's Morocco, because they say that the nation of Morocco settled this land before the United States did. They're like, I don't need a right. So the guy went through a toll. Another guy got pulled over and he threw the flag out. He's like, I'm traveling on the land. He's like, I'm not driving, I'm traveling. He's like, I'm a traveler.
Yeah.
I want. So they had to let him go. And it was crazy because he was like this giant black guy. And it looked like one of those videos where they're about to pull him out of the car and he just threw the flag out and he was cussing all of them and going crazy. And all these cop cars showed up, but they're like, he's right. We got to let him go. And everyone that was filming was like, what the hell just happened? Like, how did he get away? Yeah.
Oh, actually, send that link in the little group we have. I want to watch that one. That sounds
all right,
cool.
Yeah, I'll find it. It's somewhere in there. What was I going to say? Yeah, it's great because it all really goes back to words and because it really does involve your consent. A lot of this court system just has to do with you signing over, going there, paying them, just doing it. Once you stand up and talk about how you're a real person and they're a fictitious entity, all that law, they're basically dead and you are a living being. Another thing that I've heard too is if you're going to sign something for the government in the United States anyway, or maybe even in Canada he was talking about, that you should put the word by, like BY, and then put your name, and then under it put all rights reserved and have it actually touch your signature. So you still have and maintain your rights. So if later, for whatever reason, they try to say you signed it, like, no, I haven't. I'm a person.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
You seem pretty clued up, Brandon, actually, because I wasn't really, until I joined some of these groups and things, I wasn't really that knowledgeable about it, but you seem to have quite a good understanding already anyway, Brandon. So I don't think it would be too hard for you to, to learn a bit more, actually.
Yeah, this is the newest thing that I'm trying to learn, and this actually can bring me into what I want to talk about with everybody next is solutions, because I feel this is one of the solutions, because what I've seen There's that guy, Kyle Washington. There's another video that he did on YouTube. If you look, with Richard Grove from Tragedy and Hope, it was about a year and a couple months ago. Go back in his videos and you'll see, and it has to do with 5G. And he's basically talking about how you could stop the corporations from doing 5G with the same thing. You just send them a letter and say, okay, we accept you putting 5G if you could prove that it's safe and effective. If not, you got to give us, $1 million or whatever. So, so I got into that a little last year, and then I've been getting into it a lot recently because for all this stuff, vaccines, masks, all this stuff, it falls into common law. And if you're not buying into their solution, in my opinion, if you're not going to them, it's a lot harder for them to come after you. I mean, when you live in the cities, it's different, but if you can get away from these cities, I think that this quote unquote apocalypse or whatever, New World Order, it's really affecting the people who are gonna be dependent on the system. So if you can get yourself away from being on the dependent on the system and just make yourself aware of this knowledge, I think they're gonna, like I said, go on to different prey. They're gonna leave you alone most times, because at the end of the day, it's just police, it's just people enforcing these laws and rules. So.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that, James? Because me and Brandon always often imagine, just setting up like a little community in the countryside or something and being self-sufficient. And that I still do want to do that. It's just difficult at the moment with certain things, logistics and money and things like that. What's your opinion on that?
I do like those ideas, but I know they're not going to work because the system as it is currently doesn't care if you go and make a community out in the middle of the forest. They're still going to come and find you. And once they've got everyone else under control, it might be a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, but they'll come with force and they will literally exterminate you. Like that's a fact. They don't want any kind of resistance living out in happy, peaceful communities. No, I mean, that could always be a backup plan. But I believe what we need to do in Australia is to keep on continuing to get this message out there and then get behind a real political party. Like the one I'm following at the moment is Australia One with Ricardo Bossi. And I'm finally going to make contact with him today. And he's ex-military, he's ex-SAS, a businessman as well, very switched on. And that's what I think we need to do. We just need to get enough people to realize what's going on, vote this guy in, and then drain the swamp. And I was watching an interview with him yesterday, and he said, yeah, no one's safe. Like all these evil, corrupt bastards, their justice will come. Absolutely. And because if we just go, oh, we're all going to ignore this and go out into these communities, like, a fight is going to be coming at one day or another.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's what the bushfires are connected to. If I'm honest, I think, in my personal opinion, what went on with that, they were trying to destroy a lot of people's livelihoods out in the countryside and, in those ways. And they've had no choice but to be moved on by the military. And they became homeless. They lost their homes. They lost animals and land and things like that. So I think you're right in that respect, where they probably would just set you on fire.
That too, yeah.
I like what you said about the education also, because if we can get people awake to these ideas, I think that's also important too, because so instead of running to the countryside, you could build your community here, and then you could just have people start gardens and just be more reliant on each other. So this way, like, even if you start a neighborhood watch, so this way, if like the government comes for one person, there's a bunch of people that might walk outside and say, what the hell's going on? Like, I think that's our best bet, is to also build it from the ground up, like build this community, because I feel like that's one side effect that this whole New World Order with television and all this mind control has had. It's split everyone up. Everyone's in their home watching TV. So if the cops come to their neighbor, they don't care. They just come drag them away. But in some of these videos you see, especially in America now that everyone's doing the whole defund police, whatever, but once people start to stand up, then the cops back off. There's really nothing they can do. So I think even with the military here in the United States, I think if people just start to build that community up, and it like you said, you got to start with spreading the truth, and people got to get awake to it. But I really think that's, in my opinion, that's a good solution.
I mean, you guys have such easier access to weapons, though.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that's the big difference. If you've got like, cops come to someone's door and try to like illegally arrest them and take them away and do whatever, like your neighborhood watch, everyone comes out with assault rifles. You
Yeah.
know, that's going to make a big difference. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really good
yeah,
one.
I watched some video with it was a bunch of guys who were attempting to do a citizen's arrest on a cop, and they were just knocking on his door, and they had a few people out the front. They were filming it. They had assault rifles and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, weapons make a huge difference if you're going to be doing that kind of stuff, you know. And it's like a weapon is neither good nor bad. It depends on the person who's holding it. You know, you can use it as a tool to create freedom, or you can use it as a tool to create tyranny. Depends on the intentions behind the person wielding it. Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
That's a great point.
Mark Pasteur says it as well, doesn't he? He's like, they can try, and you'll see what's going to happen. We've got guns.
Yeah, I hear you. I think, though, even without the guns, because this is the thing, like, some of these situations, these guys had to back down because, like, SWAT showed up and all these people. So even if you could just build that community, but yeah, for sure, though, when you have guns, it's a much different situation because they're always going to think twice. In certain situations, like in the cities and in the heavy, densely populated suburbs, they're just going to show up with a bunch of SWAT. But when you get out to certain areas, they're just going to leave you alone. They're not really going to.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're taking care of your own problems. Like, and this, I think, goes back to the system because it seems to me that this is really a system of consent all the way around. A lot of it, obviously people get eaten up by the system, but it seems to me a lot of people that are going toward it, and they create these problems, like they create the COVID, and there's a lot of people getting hurt, and there's nothing they can do, but it's still based on behavior. Because if you look at the overall behavior of everyone in the United States, I feel what's going to happen is, since World War II, we've been living high in the hog, living off the backs of people in China, basically. And people in this country don't want to realize that we live like richer than anyone. Like everyone in this country basically lives like a king used to live. We can eat whatever, all kinds of different stuff. We have all these luxuries, air conditioning, cars. And I think we're going to have to lower that standard of living, and the people that are ready to face it and can adapt to it are going to face it a lot better. And then the other people are going to run to the government. And those are the people that are going to end up in fucking camps and, with vaccinations and shit. I think that's kind of how it's going to also go down. But I think what we can do is just try to wake as many people up as we can, I think we kind of feel survivor's guilt because how they say time is like a loop. It's not really linear. It's just always happening once. So I think people like us that see what's happening and might be able to be coming, we feel that about these, masked people that are just walking around like, oh, whatever you say, I'll do it. Like that doesn't lead to a good place. When the government tells you to do something, you automatically do it. Their thought isn't, we're going to cut the numbers down. Their thought is, what can we get these motherfuckers to do next? You know what I mean?
Oh, I bet they're having a blast.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I've just seen two people walk past my apartment without a face mask on, smiling and not. They went jogging, they weren't doing exercise. I felt like running out and cheering them, being like, "Wow, y'all got a mask on!" Woo!
Yeah, we gotta stick together. I do it when I see someone in the store without a mask. I'm like, yes, thank you.
I've just been going out more later at night and stuff like that. This is my problem, though. I mean, I don't know what your experience is, James. Without the masks, I know Brandon feels a bit different because it's not like as mandated here, but for me it's like the shopkeepers and the taxi drivers have been fine. It's actually the general public which I'm worried about, like walking out and the judgments and the looks and the, you know what I mean, like I'm more worried about them. If a policeman came up to me, I could handle the situation. It's the general public. Apparently there's been fights and brawls over people not wearing masks and all sorts of shit.
No, I don't even worry about the judgment. Just, walk. If you're walking past someone who's wearing a mask, I still treat him like a normal person. Just hello. I did that interview with the Current Affair yesterday, and they had me walking along the boardwalk, and I'm, and they're filming, and I was walking past a couple of people wearing masks. I'm just like, g'day, like hello, still just normal people. They've just been tricked they probably don't want to be wearing the mask. They know it's stupid, but they're just afraid. They're just afraid and lacking information. So I don't know. I personally aren't feeling that judgment. I'll go to the supermarket. I'll walk around whistling like I'm having a good day. I'll say hello. I'll try and stop and educate as many people as I reasonably can. You know?
Yeah. I think I might whistle kill next time I go up to Woolies. I'm joking. I'm not going to do that.
I think it's good that you bring that up, Kayleigh, because I feel that's the pressure that a lot of people are feeling. You're just brave enough to not wear it, but most people are going to be like, well, you know, I don't want to piss everyone off. I don't want to get yelled at. So they just go along and do it with a crowd. And I think that's where it's important that people are being that influence and being that example to show people, look, it's okay. You can not wear a mask. You know, the places that I go frequently without a mask, there were some times where I was the only one. Now it seems that when I go there, I've seen less people. Like I went to an Aldi that I go to about once a week, and like there was a worker there without a mask the other day. I'm like, we're winning. Nice. Like the guy's working here, he doesn't even have one. So even though all the corporations last week put in these you know, like Walmart, Aldi was one of them, Home Depot, they all said they're going to make people wear masks. They're all backing down from it if people give them resistance or just letting them in. So
good news. I've got to run shortly, guys. Are we able to wrap this pretty soon?
Yeah, sure. Just going to say, would you like to, are you able to put some links? Would you be happy if we linked your Facebook page and maybe YouTube channel at the bottom or something?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Get the message out there. Yeah, for anyone who's watching wants to know more information about me or follow with the channel, got YouTube, Facebook page, you know, my personal profile. What else do we have? We've got the Facebook group. So it's all the Conscious Truth Network. The Conscious Truth Network. You'll be able to find that. Get in there, start supporting, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, because I can't do this by myself. I need all of you watching to be able to be the marketing team for me to share this content and get it out there into the eyes of the people who really need it, who need those voices of reason and wisdom to help guide them to the right side, the side of the light. So, and also I am accepting voluntary donations as well, because this is my full-time work. I'm fully dedicated to helping save my country and help the good men and women of this country. So if you feel like donating, that would be much appreciated. And I've got a merchandise store selling some cool CTN clothing, some T-shirts, hoodies. Get around it. You'll be the coolest hipsters wearing the most conscious gear around. Elevate your status, elevate your consciousness at the same time. Get around that. We'll put some links in the description, or, you know, you'll be able to find it somewhere. Cool.
All right. Well, thanks for your time today. It's been great, and we'll let you get off then and get on with your unmasked day.
Yeah, so much to do, so busy.
Thanks, James.
Awesome.
I just want to say, I just want to say thanks to you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it, and thanks for being a beacon for everyone and not wearing a mask. But go ahead, finish that thought.
Nah, all good. Yeah, thank you. Anytime you want to have a chat again, just hit me up, and love to do another one. Awesome.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. Yeah, thank you then.
Whenever. All good. Get the publicity out there. That's what we're going to do.
Awesome.
All right.
Definitely collaborations key. See you later then. Bye.
Bye.